kids at home, Scott ToyGuru Neitlich here for another installment of toy trends on my channel, Spectra Creative. Making this video because it's kind of a follow-up to a few videos I've done recently, and I think I've given the false impression that toy companies don't like making adult collector product, and that's not true at all. They do love making adult collector product. Even though it is a small part of the overall industry, it's still a big part of it. And I want to talk about why they like it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different action figures that appeal to the adult collector. You know, things like Marvel Legends that bring beloved characters from both current movies and nostalgic comic books, to 3D permanent life that you can pose on your shelf is awesome. And of course, there's also your sort of more adulty superheroes that kids may not be as familiar with, but as adults in the comic book and toy collecting industry, we are, and they're beloved, and if you will, they deserve action figures. And then of course there are characters that are from, we'll call it animated series that a kid might stumble upon, but it might not exactly be appropriate for kids, might have a little bit of adult humor in it. I might put South Park into this category obviously as well, but they also wind up as action figures and are definitely aimed more towards the adult. And then, of course, on the full other side of the spectrum are the figures that are absolutely aimed at adults that come from content that kids are definitely not, or gosh, I hope not, watching. Parents out there controlling what their kids watch. But, this toy is made in a form factor that appeals to our nostalgic sort of impulse based on, vintage action figures that we grew up with in the 80s. And then, speaking of growing up in the 80s, you also have the action figures based on those nostalgic properties where, you give this toy to a kid and he might not exactly know that it's General Zod from Superman 2. He might just think it's, some guy in a karate outfit wielding a big gun who has a goatee or something like that. Maybe hopefully kids are watching Superman 2 and the Richard Donner cut as well. Who knows? One can hope, right? All right, so while I definitely have said that the adult collector industry, or figures made directly for adults, is a small drop in the bucket, that doesn't at all mean that companies don't like doing this. I mean, honestly, every dollar counts, right? I mean, why would you not make product if there's an audience, even if the audience is a little bit limited? And there are major reasons why large companies and small companies make adult action figure product. So let's go through a couple of them and some key insights about the industry. So first off, there can be things like licensor relationships. Sometimes licensors want very specific versions of specific characters done as action figures, whether it's because of talent or because of upcoming events or upcoming content, but a lot of times licensors will request things like this. Other times you get nutballs who work at companies and are willing to work 2 jobs and weekends to make their dream action figure. Okay, there's not that many people who do that. But yeah, every once in a while you get a goofball who does do that, and then you get some really awesome adult action figures because you get dedicated people working on it. And I'm including the Horsemen and Bill Beneke and Terry and everyone else as well. We all made this out of love. That can happen too. Then, of course, you have companies that want to expand their property base, and they want to be able to cover as many properties as possible. Or perhaps doing a figure from one property that's more adult is a gateway to doing other properties. It might be like a test with a studio or a licensor holder to see how you handle one thing as a way to get your foot in the door for a larger contract, a larger licensing agreement. All right, so with those kind of general ideas out there, let's dive in a little bit and look at the industry about why companies do adult action figures. And as I said in the beginning, it's obviously money. I mean, obviously, no one is going to make and tool and put in all of the labor to make product if they can't make money from it. It has to, otherwise the company's going to fall apart. So that's, of course, the big one. But what I want to draw everyone's attention to is when you look at NPD data about the toy industry, you'll see here action figures and accessories right there at the top. There's no separate category for adult action figures. All action figures are part of this category. The industry and companies and retailers don't really break it up the way we do in our mind. So while there might be an action figure that is, we feel, is aimed at an adult, and, Breaking Bad action figures aside, mainstream product, while it's going to appeal to an adult collector, it's in the same overall category from an industry standpoint as every other action figure out there. It's not broken out. And as I mentioned previously, one of the big reasons that action figures might be produced for more of an adult audience is to get a bigger license. So for example, a big reason that Mattel did the Ghostbuster action figures for Matty Collector is that, well, for starters, Matty Collector just even existing and being a thing is what got Sony's attention. Sony said, hey, look at what Mattel's doing. They're running, an adult action figure business that, Hasbro or other companies at the time weren't really running. They might be a great partner to talk to. So Matty Collector existing became a beacon to bring in Sony as a partner. Sony approached Mattel because of Matty Collector, and Mattel then therefore signed up with Ghostbusters doing the adult collector figures because the bigger prize was doing the kid figures in a movie year. Granted, the movie that Mattel did, the one with the female cast, not this one, didn't perform to expectations and wasn't as toyetic, but the vintage line that was kind of the prize, that was like a $180 million toy line. So doing these figures, these collector figures, was a gateway for Mattel to get the kid audience, which is the bigger piece of the pie. And kind of speaking of that, another reason that adult action figures are done is because of the PR. They can generate a lot of press. They get covered by websites and they get covered in the media. And when you do these kind of figures, reveal them at things like New York Toy Fair, or, Hasbro has this great Pulse, Fan First Friday kind of thing. They do. I think Marvel Legends get Mondays. I don't know. I can't keep track. But the point is, adult figures become a springboard for companies to generate a lot of PR. It's also another big reason companies do adult figures. Now, when you're looking at other things that are aimed at adults, like, for example, Noble Collections doing prop replicas or some of their really high-end stuff, well, there's a reason that, for example, say Walmart and Target don't carry this stuff. Because unlike action figures, this stuff really does require huge amount of package. Like if you're shipping it, it's got to be in styrofoam and peanuts and the whole 9 yards. This chess set, absolutely a quote-unquote toy, but this is a very, very high-end adult toy. This is not, a chess set for kids. I mean, kids could play with it, but I'm sure it's maybe not their first choice. This one in particular might be for a Lord of the Rings fan, who wants to do epic battles on the chessboard. So you're not going to see sets like this at a Walmart or a Target. Now, you look at something that you will see at a Walmart, like this real Ghostbuster line from Hasbro. Well, here's kind of the reality check, or kind of the spinner. When someone from the industry sees that Ghostbuster line and then sees something like this, another Walmart exclusive line, the Alien Xenomorph Attack series, there's literally no difference. When they see those two lines, they see basically colorful action figures based on a vintage property that are going to appeal to lots of people. And the idea that, for example, from the previous videos answering the questions about why Walmart might not be shipping them in, super care, making sure that they arrive mint, not damaged like this. This is an extreme example, but not showing up mint is because at the end of the day, they really, you're not going to see somebody from the industry seeing a difference between that Xenomorph figure and the Ghostbuster figure, versus something like this high-end Doctor Strange statue does need super care when wrapping and shipping because it's very fragile. That's why Walmart doesn't carry it. Walmart is not set up to ship items like this, and the expectation that a company is going to treat a real Ghostbusters toy any different from that Xenomorph toy that's aimed at kids, that's kind of the disconnect. So, a perfect example is Star Wars Black Series. We might look at this and say, yeah, that's, is it Commander Cody, I think? That's a figure aimed at the adult collector. And that might be true in some of the press and some of the coverage, but 80% of the sales of this figure are going to wind up with kids, mom, dad, and gift giver. If they weren't, it wouldn't earn its place at retail. Oh, Commander Bly, I screwed up. Okay. Hey, I don't know all my clones, sorry. So we look at this, we look at Black Series and we say, oh, that's a collector figure. But it really is just an action figure. Like I showed with the NPD data, action figures is a category. So again, these DC figures, are these collector figures? Are these kid figures? They're both. There is no divide. There is no category for adult action figures and kid action figures. An action figure is an action figure is an action figure from an industry standpoint. And having a pick and pack facility that is set up to ship action figures as a category in the way you would ship, like that Dr. Strange statue or the Noble Collections chess, is kind of an unreasonable expectation because all action figures are grouped together by the industry as the same thing. Now, there are obviously people, in the world that recognize that, that adults collect action figures and are set up to do a pick and pack and ship them this way. But expecting, every company in the world to ship action figure product the way you would ship a statue or a high-end chess set, I get it. It's a hard pill to swallow because we see these things as high-end. Companies like Entertainment Earth are a great example. They have a pick and pack facility set up to treat Marvel Legends and Black Series like you would a high-end statue. So at the end of the day, yes, companies absolutely love adult action figures. There's a ton of advantages to why they do them. At the end of the day, it's because they make money. But there's PR, there's licensor relationships, licensor requests. But again, at the end of the day, whether it's an adult action figure or, a kid figure like this Buzz Lightyear, they're all the same thing to the industry. There's no divide. There's no, oh, that Buzz Lightyear is for collectors, but this Buzz Lightyear is for kids. They're all action figures. And, whether a kid or a collector is buying this version of Captain America, and there are absolutely kids and absolutely collectors that are buying this Captain America. Is it designed for kids? Is it designed for collectors? At the end of the day, it's an action figure, and there isn't a divide. Kids buy this version of Captain America just as much. And while, we tend to think of, ourselves, think at the center of the universe, and that these are designed for us, the adult collectors, yeah, they are, but 80% of the sales are still to kids. If kids weren't buying them, they wouldn't be hanging in the toy aisle. They'd be hanging in that back aisle, behind the electronics, where things just made for adults are. So, no matter what the action figure is, it's part of that action figure category. And I think that's kind of where some of the disconnect comes from in the expectations that adult action figures are their own category for retailers and manufacturers and shippers. I hope this kind of clarified because, companies do love adults and they love adult collectors. They're awesome. They're not saying they don't love them. I hope I covered everything. People have had questions. If you have more, leave them in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, give me a like. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video on the internet.